should know better. Yeah, I know.
Welcome everyone to the City of Evans City Council meeting February 1st, 2022. My name is Brian Rudy. I'm the mayor. I'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Rudy?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark?
Here.
Councilmember Spear?
Here.
Councilmember Johnson?
Present.
Councilmember Neal?
Present.
Councilmember Castle? Councilmember Mortensen?
Here.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is audience participation. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address City Council on any item not on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, do you have anyone on virtually?
No.
Does anyone have any changes to the agenda?
None.
Just the removal of the one executive session, please.
Yep.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
I second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, consent agenda, approval of the January 18th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. I will recuse myself. I was not here for that meeting.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, old business. Public hearing, consideration of resolution number 01-2022, approving of the Mountain Tracks final plat. I will reopen the public hearing and hear from staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. Tonight you have two items in front of you that will complete the city's review and process of an important new industrial park coming to South Evans. This is the Mountain Tracks Industrial Park and Mountain Tracks Subdivision, as it's called tonight in your staff report. And the first item is consideration of the final plat. And I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director, Ann Bess Johnson, for a summary of the item.
Thank you, and Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. This evening, this one presentation, we're going to go through it tonight for the final plat. It can be also referenced when we discuss the development agreement should you approve the final plat. So the intent of the final plat is really to provide for a review of the final engineering plans, subdivision improvements agreement, any public dedication of property, rights of ways, and any other legal agreements. So as you can remember, we saw this project maybe 18 months ago, and now they're bringing it for you to do the final subdivision. So in section 1807-090C and D of the code, it lists the review process and the criteria for approval of a final plat. And the review process includes submittal and completeness review. There's a referral period where outside agencies as well as the development application. There are then internal development review team meetings. There has been a lot of applicant collaboration over the past 12 to 16 months on this project. There are publications, posting, notices provided to surrounding property owners, and then it's brought to City Council. Planning Commission does not hear a final plat, so it goes directly to Council. So again, the criteria for approval is the only basis of rejection is that it's non-conformance with the adopted rules and regulations of the city ordinances and code in effect, or if it's detrimental to the public interest. So moving on to the process, again, we talked about process on the last slide too, but this is a visual process. There are pre-application meetings that are held with various technical experts on the staff side as well as the applicant side to make sure everybody understands what those concerns will be for that particular site-specific application, as well as what the design standards are and the expectations from the city. Then the applicant takes those items and rolls them into their formal application for submittal. So we do a completeness, the application is submitted, we do a completeness review, we provide public notice that an application has been received. So that's something above and beyond that the City of Evans does. we don't wait until the application is going to be heard at a hearing. We usually let people know, hey, we received an application. If you have questions, give us a call. Come in and take a look at the packet, or we can send things via email. There's also the referral process, which is about a 4-week process to get input from those key stakeholders and experts. Our operations team, wastewater superintendent, engineering, everybody's been heavily involved in taking a look at this project. Then we have internal development review team meetings so that we all come together and make sure everybody's on the same page. Then we offer initial staff comments, the applicant resubmits, and then eventually the final staff comments are provided, and those are in your packets this evening. And then we get to schedule the hearings. So before hearings, there are, again, the public notification requirements as outlined in the code referenced on this slide. So surrounding property owners were noticed of the application on October 20th, 2020. So that was the first time that surrounding property owners at that moment knew that an application has been submitted. Now, a sign was posted on the property on December 22nd, 21, and in fact, I believe 2 signs were posted along 47th Avenue there. And then it was published in the paper on or about December 22nd. Now, because of just some final edits and polishing up of the final plat, we did notice the surrounding property owners 3 times of the hearing and the continuances out of courtesy to make sure everybody didn't show up on a date where we weren't having that hearing. And then the culmination is tonight. So it's our final public hearing on this project. And again, if you do approve the final plat, we're going to hear the next agenda item will be that development agreement. So then moving on to the next slide, this is just a reminder of where this project is. It's on the east side of 47th Avenue, approximately 3/4 mile north of 46. So here's 46, here's 47th Avenue. This is the project. It's outlined in blue along with the here in this area that's outlined in red. So surrounding property uses include a very large DCP natural gas facility right here. Envirotech is just to the north. And then there's a ditch and a rail spur that also comes onto the property. This property was zoned in either 2019 or 2020 to I-3, which is the heaviest industrial zoning allowed. But there were some exceptions, and the property owner agreed to not have livestock trailer washouts or a junkyard. So those were removed from that I-3 zoning district. There are 2 existing access points. One is to the north and one is right on the south. Landscaping will be along 47th Ave. They're going to cluster the landscaping at both access points, and then in between there will be seating that will take place there. Future tenants and property owners will have to do individual site plans or special use permits for their individual parcels. And so going to this next slide, again, you can see where they're located. And these are all of the different lots. And I know the applicant also has a nice slide that will show you some of these lots are going to be used for regional detention. And that's a benefit to these the future tenants of these properties. They won't have to do on-site detention. The property owner, Mountain Tracks, was foresightful enough to realize that they are going to do regional detention within their subdivision. So again, those individual users of these lots won't have to encumber any of that surface into individual lot stormwater management systems. So that's a giant benefit to the marketability of this property. And then again, just wrapping up with the code sections here that give the review process, which was followed by staff. It was followed by the applicant and all of our referral agencies. And then it does list the criteria for approval of a final plat. And that concludes staff's presentation, and I do know that the applicant is here, and they have prepared a short presentation as well.
Sounds good. Let's hear from the applicant.
Sure.
Thank you. Good evening, Council and Mr. Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. My name is Kevin Ross. I'm the Vice President of Poudre Valley Capital. We're the holding company for Mountain Tracks. So I'll make this short and swift because I know you guys are concerned about the roads and probably want to get home. So you'll see up on the top of the screen, Tamara's joining us tonight. She lives in Denver and had a little bit of a car issue on the way down with the slick roads, so she is zooming in. So we'll get to her here. This here is an aerial view of our site. If you look at it here, do I have a fancy laser? I do. This is up north as we're looking towards Greeley there. This would be our south entrance as we're coming into the facility, and our north entrance sits right up here. But we wanted to give you an actual aerial view of it because sometimes looking at plat can be hard to determine where everything's at. This is kind of a history of Mountain Tracks, how this all started out. Initially back in 2004, Great Western Ethanol, they were the ones that annexed the main 225 acre subdivision into the city of Evans. It was a $100 million ethanol plant build out is what they had envisioned. It never came to fruition, right? Again, with the oil and gas industry, the way it can be sometimes, not everything comes to, being a reality. Back in 2014, the yet to be developed property, because it hadn't been built out, was purchased by ARB Midstream to later become Nikon Terminal. They had envisioned an $80 million crude by rail terminal facility. Again, it never developed, it never materialized. That comes into play when we came into the mix. February 2020, Northern Colorado Transportation Logistics, we purchased the Nikon Terminal. We now call that Mountain Tracks. We have began that transformation. Obviously, if you look at that date, 1 month later, something real fun happened, right, which was COVID. So we kind of had that fun time going through there. But we started beginning that transformation to a well-diversified industrial rail facility. We wanted to get into being a regional market, a regional competitor, so that we could drive business here to Evans and make it a competitive landscape. We are really excited about being part of the Evans community. We think it's great. We think it offers a lot of benefits that will drive businesses here. There's some good things going for the site, including its I-3 market opportunities. We're trying to establish multiple businesses inside of this park, right, that can be good players and good community members of the city of Evans. We think we're positioning this to be just that, and we're excited about its future. And that brings us tonight where we're hoping we can get approval of this final plat in our master development agreement. We're locally owned. Our ownership is all here in Northern Colorado. We're a privately held small business with deep generational roots to Weld County. All of our team members basically are for Weld County. I personally am from Weld County, and our owners here in Northern Colorado as well. We're not just here to buy the site, move on. We really have a vision for Northern Colorado. We have a vision for partnering with the city of Evans. We couldn't be happier with Ann and the team as they've helped us go through this process. And I think that shows that partnership that we're excited to enter into with the city of Evans to, provide incrediable job opportunities and businesses that can help the region in many ways. But we're in this for the long run. It's going to be great. We're not just looking at, I don't know what you want to say, cyclical jobs, things that come and go. These are going to be long-term jobs, positions that people can grow in and have benefit, and higher paying jobs for individuals. We're committed to Evans, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. So obviously, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to do that. This is kind of our marketing piece that we put out there. You guys have a great team here in Evans. They're also helping us with the marketing as we start positioning Mountain Tracks to try and drive business into it. And we're partnered with other entities across the state to try and drive new industries here that can utilize that rail facility and really find a home and create some jobs and some opportunity here in Evans. This is the plat that we're presenting to you tonight. You guys all have that in your packets. I don't really need to go over this and bore you, but obviously if you have any questions, I'm happy to address those. We wanted to point out this is in your packet as well, right? This is one of the appendices. You'll find that, but these are the improvements we are agreeing to. They're quite substantial because, as you guys learned with your meeting in your work session with the city attorney about flagpole annexations, right? That's what we happen to be. And so we've got to bring a lot of infrastructure to this facility. And you can see inside of your packet, we wanted to highlight it on the screen, what commitment we're bringing forth to the city of Evans and the monumental capital that we're bringing forth to try and improve that. And it's spelled out here, but again, any questions you may have, we're happy to address those in regards to that. But this, we're going to start off with some simple things as we get started. I know there's some landscaping stuff, some fencing, some signage, so that we hit the quick things fast that Ann and the team had asked for us to do, and then we have specific triggers that bring on these larger items that we will then meet as we move forward. Again, I want to thank everybody for this opportunity this evening to share with you our vision for Mountain Tracks. Here's our contact information. Trevin's in the back as well. Tamara's on the screen, but we're always available to answer questions for you. Not just tonight. We want to make that always, wide open. You have questions or comments, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And at this time, I would entertain any questions you guys may have.
Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Council have questions of our city staff or of Mr. Ross?
I don't have questions, but I have discussion.
All right, later.
Yep.
Any questions of staff for the applicant, Fred?
No, a lot of comments.
Looks like we're good on the questions for now. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this item? Anyone online? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this item? None online. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing then and open it up for discussion. We'll start with you, Councilwoman Spear.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
Well, this is just the discussion part of it, because I don't have any questions. I wasn't here in 2004 when we annexed south of the river. As you guys know, I would have been against it, along with a bunch of my constituents. But since that's happened and you outlined the timeline, I just wanted to voice just a couple of concerns that I have that looks like they're going to probably be addressed. One of them is the drainage issues. I want to make sure, it looks like there's a drainage culvert that can't be found. I think that, I just want to make sure that we're not having any drainage into irrigation for farmland and irrigation and sub-irrigation, anything going into the South Platte River. I see that it has been addressed a little bit in the package that we were given. So it does seem like it's a concern that you guys are looking at too. So, and the other thing that I want to make sure that the traffic has been an issue with previous developments. One of them was an oil rig, and the neighbors didn't want a lot of oil traffic and big rig traffic. So I think that we need to be conscientious of making sure that we have routes for any kind of big rigs that don't do a lot of damage to the farming community there. Let me see, what else did I have? The thing that I really liked about your presentation too was that you are locally owned, that you're not just coming in here to make a development and then get out of here and whatever happens to the community, too bad for the community. So I do appreciate the fact that you guys are invested in this.
Councilwoman Johnson, anything?
I think, the simple fact that, you're coming in and there's a potential for jobs for our community, that is important. Even having someone that can definitely keep our residents within, our city is definitely important. And the fact that we're able to diversify the specific types of jobs dependent on what is placed would be great for our city. And, some of the things that was mentioned by Council Member Spear, I'm glad that those are being addressed and those are concerns that are being looked into. That's all I have.
Thanks. Councilmember Neal?
Yes, well, almost 20 years ago now, I was sitting in the audience with a lot of other people, and project, and there's quite a bit of, I'll say, horse manure thrown out back then, and I was extremely concerned over the financing aspect of it, and rightly so, because the FTC come in and closed down that financial institution for improper loans. I do want to thank you for your presentation because it was short and to the point, I think, and I am looking forward to having this development take place. And I know that the residents out there that were promised a road, almost guaranteed a road being paved out there. It was County Road 33, I believe, back then. And we have actually had residents come in and plead with the city council to get that finished for them, to have that paved and completed. So I'm hoping that this project moves forward successfully for you, and we can get this accomplished. And I really am. I'm kind of thrilled with this project. It sounds very good to me.
Thank you, Fred. Councilwoman Mortensen. Mayor Pro Tem Clerk.
I'm definitely in favor of this. I'm glad this project is finally going to come to fruition. I'm looking forward to the jobs it's going to create and bring into the city of Evans. And it's always great to work with local partners and everything that want to be here in Evans and do business with us. So I'm in favor of this.
I'm in favor as well. What a good looking project to bring to our city. Council members had mentioned it, jobs. It's just well done so far. I think your plat looks fantastic, and I'm excited to see it come to life. So I'm in favor for it as well. So, any other discussion? If there's no other discussion, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve resolution number 01-2022 as proposed with the condition of approval and development standards.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 1-2022 with the recommended conditions of approval and development standards for the Mountain Tracks final plat. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item. New business, consideration of resolution number, I skipped one. Consideration of approval of the development agreement for the Mountain Tracks final plat. I'll hear back from staff.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll turn it back over to Ann Johnson, and we'll hear the overview.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Jim, members of the City Council. So in your packet is the development agreement itself, as well as an agenda memo. And the major improvements and agreements and obligations in this development agreement are listed, but just for those that may be in the audience, the standard warranty requirements of 115% and post-release retention requirements of 15% are standard in our development agreements and are the same for this application. The warranty period will be for 2 years. A letter of credit has been actually provided as a performance guarantee. Cash was provided and it was replaced by a bond, I believe, and that will be for the first phase, which is the landscaping, fence, and sign. The applicant understands that any future phasing of improvements will require another bond to come forward prior to construction activities. So the developer is responsible for improvements as found in Exhibit C of the development agreement, including maintaining both the road's internal and external to the subdivision with dust suppression controls, grading, and improvements as needed until both are paved. And those triggering events, Scott Sandridge and Mark Oberschmidt and I worked really closely together in developing those triggering events similar to what happens with Weld County. We did some comparing of what Weld County requires for the need to pave. And that was 400 vehicle trips a day. So we stuck with that, working with the applicant, and again, working as a team internally to come up with that triggering event. Burying the overhead distribution power lines on the east side of 47th Avenue will be required when initiated by the city, and they will do their proportionate share. The applicant will be required to maintain the water quality features and stormwater systems on site. There will be potable water brought to the site when needed to service their development. And that is an agreement that the city is working with between Central Weld County Water District, the city, and the applicant. There could be some upsizing that the city may want to do for that water line, and there is some agreement in that development agreement itself on what that could look like in the future. Maintaining and replacing the fence and landscaping along 47th Avenue as needed. Replacing the address on the sign to read Evans and not LaSalle will happen right away. And then as individual lots develop, each shall adhere to the land use permitting process as well as development and sign standards found in the land use code. And so again, those are the standards. We worked really hard the past 8 months on this development agreement and finessing it. And so that the city is protected and benefited, and the property owners and developers understand what their obligations are, especially to the road paving obligation that has been talked about for more than 10 years with the neighbors down there. So that the development agreement has also been written to be in effect for 10 years versus a standard vesting of 3. And this consideration was made so that the overarching development agreement is going to be in effect while all the individual lots are developed. There is an extension opportunity there as well, so that this development agreement will be the overriding development agreement, and then individual site-specific development plans will be approved by staff either through site plan or special use permit process, and then those individual property tenants may also need to do a separate development agreement with the city and the overall property developer as well. So there will be some just good layers in place to protect us all. And that concludes staff's comments regarding the development agreement. Happy to answer any questions. And again, the applicant is here.
Thank you very much. Questions of staff, the applicant, or just comments in general?
I have none.
Fred, anything?
Nope.
Go ahead, Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to add an additional comment on that to kind of build on what Ann was talking about and how important I think this is for the city of Evans, where as we bring in development inside of this business park, the city of Evans gets to have that check and balance, right, to make sure that it conforms with what you guys see as a vision for the city of Evans, right? We don't just get it, even though we're zoned I3, we don't get to go in carte blanche and just say, yep, throw it in there, right? It gives you guys those checks and balances to make sure it's going to conform with the surrounding area and what you guys envision. So I think that's important, and Ann talked about it. But, you know, if I was on that side of the dais, I would want those checks and balances myself. So I think it's important. The 10-year extension, I also want to talk about that briefly, how important we think that is. That helps us create that long-term vision as we're building out this park, so that people don't go, well, is this going to change on us here in 3 years? And, you know, is it going to look different than that? No, this long-term vision allows us to sell that to developers so that, you know, we bring in high-quality businesses into that park.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Comments now or questions? Looks great to me.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion.
I move to approve the development agreement for the Mountain Tracks final plat and authorize the mayor to sign the development agreement.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the developmental agreement for the Mountain Tracks final plat and authorize the mayor to sign the development agreement. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you for being here tonight, Mr. Ross.
Thank you, council.
You're welcome to stay. If not, get home safely. Next item, new business. Consideration of resolution number 4-2022, determining the basis for cancellation of the April 5th, 2022 election and declaring the unopposed candidates elected.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm pleased to just first lead off and say that this item tonight, this resolution, is eligible to be considered by the council. And with that, I will turn it over to our city clerk, who is also our election official, to handle the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. So pursuant to the Evans Municipal Code under section 1.14030, provides for that if only the matter before the voters is the election of persons to office, and if at the close of business on the 64th day before the election, there are no more petitions filed than open seats and no other items up for a vote before the voters, that the city can cancel the election. Well, our 64th day at close of business was yesterday. We did not receive any write-in affidavits, and we only received enough petitions for the open seats that are available. So in order to save the city some financial resources, it is our recommendation to cancel the election based upon those facts and declare the candidates elected. Keeping in mind that you will still be sworn in at the meeting following the election. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Questions of staff or comments?
No questions or comments?
All right, then I would entertain a motion.
I move to adopt resolution number 04-2022.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 4-2022. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Congratulations to those of you that are newly elected.
Congratulations.
Next item on the agenda is consideration of approval of the Idaho Street construction contract. We'll hear from staff.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a contract to complete a project that is largely funded by the Community Development Block Grants, which are federal funds that are now coming straight through Weld County. This is one of the first projects funded with Weld County's new CDBG eligibility. We're very pleased because that funding is going to work well for the city potentially as we look to complete many of the streets on the east side of our community that are still unpaved and do not have a pertinent stormwater infrastructure. So this project is on Idaho Street. With this project, we'll be both paving the surface and completing the stormwater infrastructure. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mark to elaborate on the project a little bit and comment on the contract process and our recommendation of the successful bidder. Mark.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As Jim said, this is a waterline storm sewers paving project. It was sort of triggered when a development project came in at the corner of Idaho and 42nd Street. And in looking at that project, we said, well, we need to have you look at how you're going to impact Idaho Street in terms of construction. And that blossomed to how there's some money available at Community Development Block Grant. Why don't we apply for that and maybe potentially fund part of the project with those monies? So we put a plan together. We got construction plans designed by Civil Works. We opened it up, advertised for bids. We received 7 bids. 4 of the bids were open, 3 were not open because of inappropriate paperwork. There were some additional requirements on the paperwork side because of the money that we're getting from Community Development Block Grant. The contractors didn't provide that, so we just put those bids aside. Of the 4 bids, the Falco Construction was the low bidder at about million. Just so you know, the engineer's estimate was right in that same range. The high bidder was 2.7 million. So we had a pretty good range of bids. As you know, we've been working with DeFalco Construction, and they've completed the majority of 47th Avenue with success, despite some of the delays by the utilities. We like working with them. They're straight shooters. They do good work. They've already been out on the site looking at things a little more closely to figure out where they can stage, where they can do things. We're ready to work with them, and we'd like to recommend the council award this contract to DeFalco Construction. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Questions of staff or comments?
You know,
Go ahead, Laura.
This is just for the drainage and then paving, is that correct?
We're replacing the water line, the entire water line from Idaho Street up to 40th, the block of 41st from Idaho to Denver, and then 40th from Idaho to Denver. We're installing a storm sewer from Idaho to the railroad ponds. We're going to connect or install some water and sewer services for the proposed development. The developer will pay for those installations as part of his development agreement, which you will see in the future. We're going to install sidewalk, a pan, and we're going to pave the road, so thereby alleviating a lot of the flooding problems that have happened there currently.
Okay, so my other questions then, do we have contingencies for any kind of irrigation mishaps for the irrigation ditch that's running there?
When they cross the irrigation ditch at the south end of Idaho at 42nd, they're lowering the water line, because we will take the water line out into 42nd and reconnect out there. So that's planned. We lower it so we avoid the irrigation line. So we're working around any irrigation that's out there now to make sure that we don't have any trouble during construction.
Right, because the irrigation system out there is really old and fragile.
Yep.
Fragile.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So my other questions were, we've also had a lot of Atlas incidents out there. I don't want to have us put a nice brand new shiny road and then have Atlas have problems and have to dig up our road. So are those issues going to be addressed prior to paving? They've actually already been addressed. We worked with Atlas Gas to relocate some of their gas lines at the intersection of Idaho and 41st Street, and they did it a week ago in the snow. And I was actually out there watching them, making sure we worked out the right elevations. So the gas line is going between our new water line and our new storm sewer, so we don't run into each other. So they won't be tearing up our road for their. We left the gas line in 41st Street alone. Before we pave 41st Street down the road, we'll make sure that that gas line gets moved or lowered as needed. And then we're also working with them to see what they're doing in terms of other gas line relocation and or replacement in East Evans, so that we can coordinate our paving plans with them so that they're out of there before we come in and pave. Okay, so on behalf of the East Evans residents, I want to say thank you very much for doing your due diligence before this process and project have been started. You know, we've seen before where a project has come to fruition and then a little bit later it's got to be patched and brand new. So it'd be really nice to have a nice street, and hopefully the drainage and everything will be a success story too. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
I have none.
Red?
Well, in 1974, when I started college, Idaho Street was one of the streets in Evans on the east side that I frequented quite a lot, because one of my supervisors lived there. And I'm just absolutely thrilled to hear this project coming into fruition, and that the Idaho Street, after all these years, is finally going to get paved on the east side. And it sounds great, and I'm trying to encourage everybody that I talk to on the east side to take a look, to watch this project, so that they can see how the city does the work to get the storm drains in place, and hopefully they'll be more amenable to getting their storm drainage problems taken care of in this manner. as we have the funding to do it. But I think it's going to be, to me, it's going to be something that they need to watch so that they can learn how that process is to get that storm drainage in place.
Thank you.
Good, Fred? What else? Hearing none, I entertain a motion.
I move to award the Idaho Street Construction Project contract to DeFalco Construction Company in the amount of $1,369,941.56, plus a 10% contingency to be used only with city manager approval for a not to exceed contract amount of $1,507,000.
Second.
Motion and second to award the Idaho Street Construction Project to DeFalco Construction Company in the amount of $1,369,941.56, plus a 10% contingency to be used only with the city manager approval for a not to exceed contract amount of $1,507,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thanks, Mark. Next item, consideration of resolution number 3-2022 in support of Colorado Department of Transportation Revitalizing Main Street Grant. Revitalizing.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the products of your master planning endeavors for the past couple of years is a trails master plan. And we don't want to wait too long to get started on that. Council may be aware we have a fairly extensive trails master plan that would take trail really from the east side of our community to the west, with plans in the future to connect with some of the regional trails so that Evans is more connected with other communities. Funding for trails is not easy to come by, and we have better line sources for roads, so we've been on the lookout for some funding sources. We think we may have found one, and I'll ask our neighborhood services manager, Kyle Fair, to give an overview of this project and the funding source. Tonight we're asking for your approval of the grant application, as we often do with these types of grants. Kyle, take it away.
Right, good evening. So the Evans Ditch Trail is the project we are looking to apply to this grant for. It's CDOT Revitalizing Main Streets grant. The grant is intended for large transportation infrastructure projects. Grants can be up to $2 million per application. The application must be for a project that will improve user safety, increase bike and pedestrian mobility, improve equity, and have an economic development component. This is the project we're going to be applying for. It's the Evans Ditch Trail from 36th Street, continuing down, crossing 37th Street, and then all the way down and just across 42nd Street, the crosswalk there as well. It's 5,000 linear feet of trail. For recreation, this would be a transportation, bike pedestrian transportation corridor. And the ditch service road, which would be paved as concrete as part of this project, would also be used by city equipment for maintenance of the ditch. This trail corridor is a priority in the master plan and adds nearly 1 mile of new trail within the existing 13 miles of multi-use trails within Evans. And the match request for this project, we're requesting a 10% match for $1 million projects, which can be funded with ARPA funds. And then this final map here shows the vicinity map showing the area in which this trail ties into the rest of the trail corridor within the city.
I would have just one more comment to conclude. The funding here would be great. We're always very pleased if we can get full grant funding for projects like this. Sometimes what happens on projects like this, the grantor, or in this case, the state, has more project applications than they have funding, and they offer funding, partial funding for as many projects as they can, and they can hope that the agencies can match come in with a higher match to get more work done. This project, in the end is federal funding that comes through CDOT. This is a process through this Main Street grant project. That means that like our 37th Street out in front, and like the project that we'll be doing in the 37th Street widening this summer, that funding would come with all the federal strings that we now have some experience with and that we've learned to be very cautious with, especially when the dollar amount, same requirements are in place, and we're just cautious with those. If we get full funding, we would do this project. We would proceed with council's direction to hire a project manager with lots of experience with these federal projects, like we've done on our other successful federal projects in the last couple of years, and the grant would cover that. If we don't get full funding for the project, we would have second thoughts and want to bring that back to council in the form of when we talk about accepting the grant, we want to review that grant amount with you and talk about what those federal funding burdens might be. And at this point, we might struggle to find another funding source that we would recommend to you if we had to come up with $500,000 or $700,000 for this project this year. And we would bring back all of our transportation funding demands, because even though we're fortunate with some funding, we are tight for the next few years. So with that, we are seeking your approval of the grant application, but if we don't receive full funding, we would come back to you with some considerations before we accept it, because of the federal strings that would come with this money. And that concludes our presentation, Mayor.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions of staff or comments?
So are there
please.
other things that this grant can be used for then? It sounds like, is it specific to the Evans Ditch Trail, or can we apply for this grant to do something else?
There are broader criteria for this Main Street program grant. This is the one that we feel we're certainly the most qualified for. Perhaps Kyle or Ann could speak a little more broadly to the Main Street program, but often they're looking for economic development boosts in very defined downtown areas. So I don't know, Kyle, if you have anything else to add, or Ann, if you do, but that's why we're recommending this project.
Yeah, some of the general parameters for this grant are that they'd like for it to be around a Main Street corridor in a city, and Evans is not very central with a downtown or a main street necessarily, but 37th Street is primarily our primary corridor through town. And with the components of adding bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, that portion of 37th Street that this would bypass currently doesn't really have any actual bicycle infrastructure on it. It has relatively narrow attached sidewalks, and there are not striped bike lanes or anything on 37th Street. So that was one reason we felt that this was a good candidate. Another portion of this grant is, large portion of it is the equity factor. And in this portion of town that this trail goes through, I think the average median household income is about $47,000 a year, as compared to the state, I think is $72,000. And even citywide, it's, I believe, about $59,000 per household. So this area in particular is in line with that criteria for that grant. And then again, the safety, the bike, pedestrian, and multimodal transportation. This really just continues on with that ditch trail corridor, providing those types of transportation that aren't really built out in that area. So.
Other questions or comments?
No, I would be in favor of going for the grant. I mean, obviously, if we don't get the full amount of it, I would definitely want us to come back for it, because I do know a lot of federal grants have a lot of strings tied to them, and it could actually wind up being cost prohibitive in the long run if we have to fork over more money to get a project like that done. So I'm in favor of trying for the grant, see if we get the full amount, and if we don't, coming back, and then we can decide if we want to accept it or turn it down, but it doesn't hurt to at least go out and try for it.
Yeah, I also agree with that. There's also that rural surface transportation grant that's out there as well. I don't know if that's something we want to look into as an option, but in the event that doesn't work out, or if we require additional funding, that's an option as well. But I am for definitely applying for this grant.
I think we would tie that little bit of trail over there behind the Verge in very nicely with going back to 42nd Street. And I'm in favor of hopefully getting the whole grant, and let's get her done. It'd look real nice to have that done. And I do know, I have noticed people using that stretch behind the Verge. I think more of it is their trail, I guess, those residents' particular trail, because it's so short.
Anyone else? I'm in favor of it as well. So let's try. All those in, excuse me, can I have a motion, please?
I move to adopt resolution number, oh, sorry, yep, 03-2022.
I second.
Motion a second to adopt resolution number 3-2022. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, report city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Our city clerk, Julie Kampka, usually works behind the scenes and does a lot of organizing, a lot of work to help us be ready for these meetings, in addition to a handful of other work areas, including all the administration for the cemetery, our liquor licenses, many different categories of our administrative work. But I want to let the council know tonight that Julie achieved her Master Municipal Clerk certification from the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. This is a big achievement within the clerk profession. It's the second and more advanced of two professional designations granted by IIMC. The program is an advanced continuing education program with extensive and rigorous educational programs. She's been taking classes for almost 4 years for this program since her first level of certification. And in addition to all of those classes, the applicant must demonstrate that they have actively pursued both education and professional activities to engage with and support other clerks in their area. I want to mention that we can be extra proud because Julie is one of only 32 master municipal clerks in Colorado, and one of only 1,353 that holds that certification in the United States. So it is, quite an accomplishment for Julie, and it just reinforces how proud we are to have the professional staff that we do here in Evans, and it's really my honor to recognize Julie for her accomplishment.
Thank you.
And
Good job.
that's all we have, Mayor.
Good job, Julie.
Great
That's
job.
awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Scott, city attorney.
Yeah, I can't top that, so.
Next item is audience participation. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address city council on any item? Going online. Jim, before you go into executive session, for your staff, let us know, is there any executive session we want to do first?
Probably regular meeting. There's
Regular,
the one,
okay.
yeah.
Cool, thanks. And I entertain a motion to go to executive session.
I move to go into executive session to receive advice from the city attorney on specific legal questions and to determine the city's position and instruct negotiators in connection with the annexation of property to the city pursuant to CRS sections 24-6-402, section 4, subsections B and D.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes.